Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Good seeing you.
Good, and you? Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah,
Yes.
very good.
Perfect.
Great background.
Yeah, I'm the office and I cannot have a meeting room right now, so I'm on my desk. But fortunately, we don't have so many people today, so it's kind of
Very
quiet.
good.
And
You know, it's interesting. Like suddenly the whole world is having to think about backgrounds for video calls in Zoom.
yeah, people use like the BTs or the CTs or
Exactly.
the one like
Even at home, right? Now that's
yes.
the thing. Like, hey, where do I sit? What's behind me? Does it look presentable?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
How's things for you guys?
It's good, you know.
It's flat out busy.
You know, it's one of those things you have to appreciate that maybe there's less noise and you can just,
Exactly.
focus on what you need to work on every single day.
And I saw your post last week on LinkedIn. Congratulations for everything you have done over the 36 last months.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I guess we're glad that we were set up as a digital business from day one. So in terms of our own internal operations as well. So just all of the way we work, our corporate SaaS apps have always been fully digital and fully cloud-based. And so thankfully, it's been a pretty easy transition for us to basically a fully remote working environment. Even things like Zoom, we've been using for years now.
Yeah.
And actually, it's great that at least most of the world is suddenly like literally all on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing with Zoom is currently they had that kind of security issue a few weeks ago. So now for banks, it's banned. So we cannot use it anymore. So I have to use
honestly, I was just talking about this internally because Fusang actually is in the process of taking over running IT operations across our entire Greater group. And again, someone brought up something as noticed, and I said, honestly, I think it's fine. We've been using Zoom for a long time, and we think it's the best and most secure option. And I don't understand the recent furore. I haven't seen them have any technical breaches. There's a lot of user-related issues, but I'm like, is that really their fault? What are they going to do about that?
So yeah, we just use WebEx and Cisco WebEx and Microsoft Teams for now. So it's the two options that we have.
Yes.
Yeah. Big long-standing contracts with WebEx, I assume.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but maybe that's a great place for us to start our conversation because as I'm sure you know, Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom, he built WebEx right from the ground up, and then he sold it to Cisco, and he started Zoom as WebEx 2.0 to say, hey, now that I built this from scratch, I've learned what to do better. Here's version 2. And I guess, honestly, that's what all of us are trying to do in all of our organizations, right? We say, hey, we understand how version 1 works. It was great, but let's see if we can build a version 2 that just does a little better and redefines the way in which it actually operates while still having the same core use, right? WebEx and Zoom do the same thing.
Yes.
You get right down to it, but hopefully it does it in a better way. And I guess, on your side, right, with the bank, that's what you're trying to do, right? Banking, I don't believe is about to change anytime soon in terms of the core feature. I honestly don't buy the story when people say, yeah, banks are going to disappear. I don't believe that. I do think that the way in which banks operate and how they interact with their customers is going to change pretty radically, but you'll still need someone to play that role.
Yeah, definitely. I think what will change is a way to execute some orders, or to give access to the client about some products in a better way. Like we try to still to do the same thing, not physically but digitally right now. Is where we try to make the banking invisible as well. And the other thing is how we can integrate the technology of the bank, how we can integrate the process and workflow of the bank behind the scene of an application like Deliveroo, Uber, Grab, or Foodpanda. So for you, it's really easy to use the application. It's really easy to, to make the payment, and you don't care about how the payment is made and how we split the money between the software or the companies that you're using, the restaurant, the driver, and all those people there. So it's what we try to do because we still need to collect the money for those companies. We still need to distribute the money for those people working for the company. And we still need to offer different products for them as well. in terms of FX or in terms of product, financial product.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And if you don't mind me asking, there's obviously bank as front-end consumer-facing platform, and then there's, as you mentioned, bank that empowers other platforms, like kind of works behind the scenes. Do you have a specific focus, or you're doing both?
For DBS, you mean?
Yes.
For DBS, no, we are looking at invisible banking, so we still need to, how can I say that? We have a branding in terms of high net worth individuals, so that's the segment that DBS has now. So we're not mass market compared to other banks like HSBC or Hong Seng, because those bank has history in Hong Kong on the market, and the market share is quite important. But we try to deliver the best services for high net worth individual, SME, and corporate. That's our main segment. But we also try to, because DBS has worked since 2012 on the migration from like the traditional and legacy on tech side to API. So now we have more than 200 APIs live in Hong Kong. For the group is more than 500 APIs. So we try to connect with the different partners to see how we can deliver all those services for APIs directly to them. So we try to embed ourselves in that new innovative way to do deals, transact with clients, or generate leads.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, exciting. Well, I mean, first of all, thanks for actually joining the call. And I think as Eli had more or less mentioned, the purpose of this call is just more to have open discussion, industry type activity that's happening, what DBS is focusing on, what we're focusing on, and broadly creating some content that is basically co-produced that we can both leverage upon. So I think we can keep the conversations flowing, but I think the areas, and I think I said this to you, I mean, I'd love to talk about this whole big hype around virtual licenses, right? What the impact would be, things like that. I think you saw my questions. I know that your group in itself is focusing a lot on big data, right? So that's going to be a good point of topic. Everyone's been talking about it for years. That's one of the main investments for technology. And the last one is just around innovation and what innovation really means, right? Because I do believe, like, I was talking to one head of customer experience for a local insurance company. And for them, they said, sometimes it's not about technology. You look at what we have today, we've got a customer intake form that we've used for the past 10 years. It's got 25 questions, and we went through it and we assessed whether or not we need this information and why, and we cut the form down to 14 questions. That's innovation, right? It is, right?
Is it?
It's quite interesting to see it, because I was like, yeah, I guess it is, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like huge leaps and bounds, but actually, having 9 less questions, to me, actually, I would be happy with, right? So
if you decrease the onboarding time from like 30 minutes to only 10 minutes, people will do it easily and they won't complain about it. But if you have to fill 25 forms and actually you just need one services, doesn't need for example, your proof of residence, you don't have to share it with the question. So why do you have to reply to that form?
Exactly. Well, when we just start out, actually, I'm very curious to know, like, what's new and exciting happening with the Startup Xchange at DBS. I know you've been involved for quite some time as the Fintech lead, but what is its overall mission besides what I see on the website? Like, what are you guys focusing on this year?
So we have a big focus on AI, to be honest with you, and machine learning. So how we can collect the data, how we can work with the data, and how we can, use the data to have hyper personalization of the services for the client, how we can leverage on this data to understand more the need of the market and how we can serve better a corporate as well, for example. The other thing is Startup Xchange is it's a way to experiment and innovate for DBS. So our job is really to work with local startup. We try really mostly to work with local Hong Kong startup or local Asian startup more than any other companies in the world. So we're not interested to work with big corporate or company with thousands of employees, but really to give back to the community. So for example, you have in Hong Kong, something really interesting is machine learning and AI. you have a couple of companies here, and I think they are quite good, to be honest with you, in terms of skills, in terms of implementation, in terms of product development. And we will go to them. We will try to find what are the specificity, because there's different companies and they focus on different verticals or pain point. We come back after to the different business unit and we try to work with them on what are their issues. So the way that we work with my team is we go to the business unit and we ask them if they have some time to investigate on the problem statement that we want to focus on. Sometimes we come back with a really large one like this, and we will just focus on a small one. So we will, trim all those friction that they have, and we will try to come to the core problem that they want to see. And the goal of the problem statement and startup exchange is to see the feasibility of the solutions. So we try to take a picture of now versus what is expected from the POC that we will do. POC is proof of concept. Right. For me, the definition of proof of concept is to try an experiment for 2 weeks to 2 months, not more than this. Otherwise, it becomes really bigger and it becomes a pilot. So we will try really to focus on few features, see the feasibility, and see what we can solve. Do we solve some times? Do we solve some issue and reduce number of action from an employee, a banker, from 60 clicks, for example, where there is manual inputs, to only 10 clicks for validation? Or can we generate also revenue, transaction, client acquisition, or leads? It's how we work with the teams now.
Okay, so then what happens after that? So is the idea, obviously, is more or less to bootstrap this development on something very focused with the startups. Now, is the intent for them to then build a product that gets commercialized on their side, or is also the intent potentially acquiring their team to then continue to build upon that proof of concept?
So it's a kind of we try to do win-win. So there is kind of membership for proof of concept. We pay for development, so it's not for free. Yeah. Otherwise, it will be a lot of commitment from the startup. And it's not also like the fees for proof of concept is not so important because they cannot generate revenue, but it compresses all the all the different costs that the POC can have. Right. For the bank, it's more on experiments to see if a way to work with a startup, a new technology, can be a good solution to solve some issues that they have. If the POC is successful, and most of the time we have learnings, even if the POC is not successful and we fail, we have different learnings. Why we fail, what is not possible right now, and how we can twist the story, how we can twist the workflow to make it feasible in the future. But if the POC is feasible, what we will try to do is to showcase that POC in the end with the team and the startup inside the bank and see how we can continue. So the objective is not to do POC, otherwise it's just a marketing tool, but to show to the bank, this is feasible. Maybe one team did it and other teams can also have an interest on it. So let's try to go deeper by using a pilot for 1 year, for example, with that company, or also by acquiring the solution as a vendor. We don't invest money inside the capital of the startup at this moment. We don't integrate with teams with us. We collaborate with them. So they become kind of partners, vendors for short term or long term.
Right. So what are the challenges you face? So because I've been in a number of startups that have worked with financial institutions, and there's always been this gap in knowledge of what the real problem is. Additionally, the banks themselves have not really found the underlying root cause. So how do you work best with these startups? What are the challenges and how do you overcome them?
So you have many challenges. Some of the challenges is the team can change, or in the startup or in the bank. Yeah. So you have stakeholders that are here and they are leaving the company, and after this, it's difficult to find someone else who want to achieve this project for a long time. So it can be one of the issues. Other issue can be tech issue as well. So we are working mostly on cloud solution, and we try sometimes to don't do integration to reduce the friction of technology. But if we do integration, sometimes you have different issues on the integration on the architecture of DBS and also integration of the solution from the startup. It can be something we can increase for an unknown period timeline, and a POC that we want to work for 2 months can become a POC for 6 months. So unfortunately, this happened. Another thing, it's so we try every time to do due diligence on a startup as well. to see if they are feasible for them to deliver the project and to work with a team, if it's a good fit or not. And it can be sometimes a bit challenging for them. They are facing other issue, HR issue, maybe financial issues as well. So it's a risk that we take. That's why I'm working on a really small project. And like this, we can decrease all the friction that we have. No integration as well on the cloud is also better. Sometimes we have no choice, so we need to integrate them on the sandbox. And that we have no choice. It's better to integrate it in the sandbox. So it's really good to work with them. But otherwise, so on 20 projects last year, we didn't face so many problems at this moment. The problem will be maybe more after the delivery, how we can go to the next steps. So sometimes it's not that easy to integrate the solution inside the architecture of DBS because, there is many stakeholders that are coming here. We're also a regional bank, so we need to have different validation levels from the headquarters or from different managing directors. We need also to see if it's not something that we have already in the pipeline to be developed in the future. So yeah, it can be human, can be financial, can be technology, can be also on the project planning.
Do you mind if I press you on that? So internally, in your organization, what are the hardest stakeholders to convince in that process? You had to name one. What do you think the biggest obstacle always is to internal adoption?
One is really interesting. It's we work on a framework and a process to execute the proof of concept. So it's really easy for us. So when we want to work with a team, if the team agree on it, we have a budget in my team. So we can sponsor the project. So one of the issue can be later on in the year, if we are short on budget to do a POC, it will be maybe certainly challenging to do it. Otherwise, we don't face so many issues. It will be more right now with the coronavirus situation, prioritization of the businesses. So we can work on the POC in the beginning. And because the coronavirus change and we need to continue to do BAU, so continue the business as usual here, a kind of experiment can become a secondary and the team will focus more on continuing the business here. So it will be this one, I want to say. Otherwise, the culture in DBS is really interesting. I was really surprised when I came and I'm still surprised. The job done by the teams before for the last 5-6 years of creating the challenge, creating hackathons, creating a workshop on innovation has been so far so good. And the teams are really willing to work on solutions, especially if you come with a solution that they can solve problem statement for them. And also you say you have the budget to finance it. It's really interesting to see that. And you tell them that, listen, give me like a couple of hours per week for 1 month or 2 months. I promise you it's worth. And they will come back to you and they say, okay, let's do it.
Right. Okay.
One of the things I can implement here, it's quick wins makes the difference as well.
Yeah.
So if you work on a small project and you deliver it quite fast, quick wins make they are really a key game changer inside a big organization.
Yeah. Like I had met with this one AI company that's out of the science park, and they had a pretty decent looking product, mainly just to use at the ATM machines, right, for facial recognition. Yet they found it incredibly challenging to then reach into a financial organization and to get buy-in, right? So one thing is they're probably not talking to the right people, but I can imagine from the bank's perspective, there's so many companies and so many startups to actually select from. And I guess you can either pick it based on a team member's experience or an existing demo product that they have that looks pretty strong. Yeah.
Yes.
So with some API library that at least you can do some integrations at a certain level.
Exactly. One of the things working with startups is when you start to work on the problem segment, you don't work only with one startup, you need to do selection of different startups. Yeah. So for myself, my team is working on doing a kind of a competitive landscape and a swap analysis. So we can select the team and the project based on different criteria. After this, sometimes it's a mismatch as well, because the company will reply to few missing items, but not the big picture. And sometimes I work with some companies and I try to see how we can integrate them. But if you have 4 pillars on your problem statement, maybe the company will solve only problem 1 and 2, maybe only problem 3, maybe only problem 4. So sometimes it's really difficult to work with them. After this, from the startup perspective, I can see the difficulties. If you work with a too large bank, whereas you have like 10,000, 20,000 employees, you have different innovation leads. So which one is the right one? And I was in a startup also before. And when I went to some banks, I was speaking with one person, and the person did a second meeting with another person, and another group of person, and another group of person. And in the end, you have 15 leads, 15 meetings, 15 hours of work, deliver a presentation, and you have nothing because nobody can agree. So from our team, we are the central team of DBS. We are a bank of 5,000 people, and we are the one bringing the expertise from the startup to the right team and the right stakeholder. So we try most of the time to fast track those meetings and gives directly access to the key stakeholders from a business, because in the end, it's a business who sponsors the proof of concept or the pilot with DBS and our team. So for us, it's really like well determined. We have a clear map of the different stakeholders that we need to integrate on the project and see how we can validate the project or not. If we cannot validate the project for different reasons, we come back to the startup and we give the feedbacks. Listen, we think you're not here yet. We take a look at you and we come back in a couple of months. Please feel free to reach out again in 1 quarter or 2 quarters. If you make some improvement on your solution, we are super interested to see it. Otherwise, let us come back to you, because the team right now has, I don't know, a couple of long projects right now for 6 months. Cannot delegate sometimes for you, but maybe in 6 months' time, we can generate a new lead with them and do a follow-up meeting. So we try every time to be really, really transparent with the teams. If it's an issue with the product, we tell them. If it's an issue with internally that we cannot deliver the right team to spend some time with you, we can see it as well. So for some companies, it's quite fast, and we can agree on a POC, proof of concept, in 3 weeks' time. For others, sometimes it's back and forth during like 1 or 2 quarters to discuss with them.
Understood. So maybe when we skip to that topic of innovation, because I think this is always interesting when it comes to companies at all levels, whether they're small or big. So I think definitely everyone has an idea of what innovation is, but then the priority to put investment, whether it be time and resources, into that innovation. Maybe we could just talk about that broadly. You know, Henry can mention from our experiences as well. But yeah, so these, you know, I can imagine you guys may identify some business case, some issue in the bank. So then you try to create, you know, there's something that we can innovate, but then it goes back and forth between the stakeholders on the business side and the technology side as far as what's possible. There's these other things you need to also look at as far as time and budget and a pipeline with other projects.
Exactly.
How do you come to a conclusion of what is the priority? Well, what's urgent? Everything seems urgent, right? Everyone wants to work on something.
So one of the solutions is to not include technology in the sense that you don't do integration on the architecture. So when you don't have integration, you can do the testing of a solution, for example, on the software side, just on the cloud of a company. So I'm pretty sure you have your cloud software. And if I ask, if we work together, you will give me a login with a password to try the solution, and I can send you dummies data on the system, and I can try to make the analysis. This is a real like way to work with a startup in the beginning. After this, we can also work on some integration. So when we work with some integration, we have in DBS, we have a business platform, and we have a tech platform for each teams. So we include those stakeholders from those 2 platforms on the business side and tech side, and work with them to see how we can deliver the best solution possible. In terms of money, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are fortunate because we have a budget, central budget to do experiments. So we don't have to go to different levels. We have levels of approval, of course, but depending on the amount we spend on the project, if it's under a certain level, it's quite fast. It's like above a certain level, we need to go from in front of a committee. That committee is meeting every month and give approval on this project. So if the project is not like $1 million of Congo dollars, it's okay. We can go quite fast. It's more than $1 million of Congo dollars, for example. Here, it's a lot of investment. We need to see if it's worth to make that investment and how we can do it for the better of the bank and the startup as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the simple answer to that question is that you need to be customer focused, right? All of us as companies, at the end of the day, for us to survive, we need to make sure that our customers like us and keep paying us money. And the question is, does that innovation make their lives better? And, I take a very broad view of the word technology, right? And I've always liked Arthur C. Clarke's line when he says that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Right? and I believe that. I think that to a customer, good innovation, good technology should feel like magic. It should just work, to steal an Apple line, right? They don't care what the technology is. They just want to know what it means for their lives. Does this make life easier, better? Can I do more with it? That's why even on the Fusang side, I mean, we think that we've revolutionized the way that securities can be issued, tracked, traced. I don't think anybody's going to care, at least in terms of our consumers. They don't care about how the technology works. They say, what does this mean for me? Will it make it cheaper and easier for me to buy securities? Do I have access to a bigger range of things? If I want to transfer this to someone, does this mean I can do it in minutes versus weeks? That is the only thing customers care about. And I actually think that the best tech companies in the world, right, the Apples and Amazons of this world, do so well precisely because they don't think of themselves as a tech company first in the sense of, hey, what cool stuff can we build? They start by saying, what's the customer need? Right? And can we execute upon that in a way that is innovative in the sense of delivering greater value to that customer than what we have today?
I totally agree with you. It's like an iceberg. What you focus is on the surface, and what is visible, you don't focus on what is on under the water right now. So the technology, if it's a blockchain, AI, or other technology, or other buzzwords that people are using, you don't care because you won't see the frameworks, the workflow, and the process behind. You just want a really fast application. You don't lose your time, and you don't have to wait for 30 seconds on your phone. For example, if you're speaking with a consumer, if you're speaking for B2B and more with teams, how you can support them and increase the quality of delivery, how you can reduce time allocation for a task. This is really important as well, and how you can generate revenue as well.
I completely agree. That's why I'm always a little amused when in our industry, people call themselves digital asset companies or even, fintech, right? So I'm a fintech company. I'm like, well, what does that mean, right? You have financial technology as opposed to the companies that don't have any technology in today's world, right? Surely all of us should be fintech companies if we're in the finance space. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people forget the Dow Jones, not so long ago, had a category of internet companies. And by that, they didn't mean companies like the Googles of the world that were technology companies. They meant companies that used the internet, that had like e-commerce. There was a whole index of internet-enabled companies. Just like how once upon a time in the late 20s, there was a Dow Jones index of electricity companies. Again, not power generation companies, but companies that used electricity in their manufacturing process. Likewise, I think all of this is going to fade. We're going to stop talking about fintech companies and digital asset companies, and we're just going to say, hey, who's actually being innovative? Are you using the latest and best technologies to enable what your customer wants to do in the first place? Are you making their lives better? And if you're not, I think you really need to think long and hard about your place in the world. Because I talk about this internally in our teams. When I say, hey, even us as a startup, we need to be very, very careful of falling into that trap of being process-driven as opposed to being customer-driven. And we need to say, hey, why are we doing this in the first place, right? Are we really making it easier for customers, right? What exactly is our outcome here? What are we doing here?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, I think we share the same vision here.
So Medhy, you're part of the blockchain committee for the Fintech Association in Hong Kong. So I guess, it's been, like Henry was talking about digital assets, people saying they're in blockchain. From your perspective in the bank, how are they investing in this technology? And how do you really see it improving, I guess, processes and transparency within the industry itself?
Sure. So just for the information, I changed my role in the Fintech Association a couple of months ago. So now I'm on the board member, and I think it's Lucy who becomes the co-chair of the blockchain committee. But in terms of what we're doing with DBS, we focus on enterprise blockchain mostly, And certainly we focus on logistics and supply chain. So the blockchain become a tool integrated to our partnership with other companies. For example, there is a couple of cases that are quite public, and you can do a couple of research on internet. But for example, with Beijing Motors, we work with them. And for the letter of credit and approval of letter of credit, we use the blockchain system with them. So here it's just the workflow we change, and it's through a blockchain platform. But what do DBS is just connecting the API with the blockchain platform and with the different partners. We have also another project with SF Express in China. What we do as well is we try to support SMEs and companies using that platform to have access to different financial services through blockchain and API connectivity. So for us, as we are totally like, I want to say 90% cloud or even more, and we have many APIs, we can easily connect to any kind of technology and support technology like the blockchain one, and continue to deliver the services there without a big integration, because the blockchain has on the outside connectivity APIs features too.
Okay.
So it's quite easy. You just change if you want to work with a CSV, with a blockchain format, with another format, and how you can create the connectivity between two platforms.
Okay, so it seems like your group is really focused on solving problems, business problems with the technology. Do you have any real concerns when it comes to supporting any changes in regulations and policies in financial services? Like
you need to work with HKMA and SFC and all the regulators quite often. To be honest with you, they are quite proactive. We receive a lot of ask for information from them, a lot of collaboration. Last year, we worked on a white paper with HKMA and PwC on the application on AI for banking, for example. So this one wasn't on the blockchain, but really on AI. How banks can use AI, what are the different risks on different perspectives, capital market, consumer facing, corporate facing, risk management, or even compliance. So different use of AI has different risks, how you monitor it, how you can escalate any problems, how you can have red flags if something is happening, how you can avoid to create a black box for tradings, for example, or for application of different method of calculation that you don't understand, how you can populate the documentation to still understand and create a skill set inside the bank. Yeah. Because in the end is how you create the skill set to understand the model, develop the model, increase the model, but still control the model. Because if you lose the control, you're not sure what you are doing, and you can create a future financial crisis as we live in 2006-8. So machine learning is really not easy to understand for everyone. It really needs like data scientists, people, experts on that field to understand and the business and the technology. But also we need to educate also regulators and the different employees here in the bank.
Okay. So Henry, what is your take on that? I mean, you and I have the discussions about the fact that in some cases there are people in let's say technology that want policies to be changed for their benefit. But we talked about sometimes like structure is already set. What are we trying to change?
Yes.
Why are we asking, you know?
Look, I mean, the philosopher David Hume talked about an is-ought gap, saying how the world is and how it ought to be are two different states, right? And never the twain shall meet. I think a lot of people in digital asset space are very focused on how they think the world ought to be, or how they think they would like the world to be, especially for themselves. And I guess I'm a little more focused on how the world is today. And I think the reality of the world that we live in is that we do have certain rules and regulations. And quite frankly, we have them for very good reason. Things like KYC and AML rules are there for a reason. Where I think a lot of people have fallen short is they've gotten caught up again in the process of saying, hey, you just have to do X, Y, Z, and forgetting about, hey, why do we have these rules in the first place? Oh yeah, it's because you really want to make sure you know who you're doing business with and you're not doing business with drug dealers. Okay, well, can we move to, for example, a facial recognition-based system so that I know who my customers are? Why does it have to be certified copies of passports? You know, things like that. And I think the good regulators, and I think here in Asia, we're actually very fortunate that a lot of the regulators are actually quite forward-thinking. Good regulators do focus on that. They say, yeah, this is my result. This is what I want. I'm open and flexible with people using new technology to achieve it. And, you know, as we said at the start of this conversation, I think it is naive to think that suddenly financial institutions are just going to disappear and we'll end up with this, you know, massively centralized world. This is going to happen because customers don't want it. Customers want banks. They like banks in terms of the function that banks serve. It's just sometimes they don't like the processes in between and the interfaces. Likewise, you know, Fusang as a digital stock exchange, we think that that role of being a marketplace where buyers and sellers can come and meet, that's not changing anytime soon. I just don't see any reason why we can't match those buyers and sellers directly, right? There's nothing that says, even in many cases in the regulations, that you have to do this with physical paper shares or you have to do this through the current market structure, right? The question is always, hey, what is our outcome for the customer? What value do they want? And in the context of our existing rules and regulations, can we find new and innovative ways of actually delivering that value?
Exactly, and especially right now with the COVID-19 situation, for example, digital signature is really important to sign some document, especially if you cannot go physically to the office that you need to go, or if you need really to deliver the document quickly. For example, I'm French, but living in Hong Kong. I cannot receive any documents through mail here in Hong Kong because it's blocked by the two borders. Yes. And otherwise, if I want to send something in France, it's not possible as well because it's blocked as well by the two borders. So no mails are going anywhere. So if you need to send a document for, I don't know, for any kind of papers that your father asks you to do, or for your bank, or for, yeah, let's say anything, you cannot do it except only if you can do it digitally right now, and if it's accepted from the regulators or accepted from the company.
Exactly. You know, I think COVID, for all the pain and suffering it's causing the world, is also going to enact the greatest shift towards digitization the world has ever seen. Look, we're doing a call remotely like this right now. And like it or not, we've all been catapulted into this fully digital world. Yeah. And people in Fusang know that one of my personal bugbears is physical wet ink signatures. I can't stand them. So much so that in all of our board resolutions, I have a clause written in requiring the use only of digital signatures to execute those resolutions. But look, the truth is, for a lot of us as licensed entities, whenever we make statutory declarations to our regulators, they still want signed copies hand-delivered in paper.
Yes.
All of a sudden, regulators everywhere have said, you know what? Actually, digital signatures are okay. And so, to be honest, I think that this is a time of great opportunity for all of us in the digital space if we understand how to leverage it. Because again, like it or not, the whole world has said, yeah, okay, I get it. I get the benefit of digital. Yes, I'm willing to look at these things from the ground up. And I think it's up to us within our organizations to help guide some of that and say, again, let's focus on the result that we want. What's the real value we're trying to drive here? And let's sit down and rethink whether with the help of digitization, we can achieve that outcome in a new and innovative way.
Totally agree with you. And we can see different examples of virtual banks or bank opening account in UK, for example, like Revolut, having like millions and millions of users every month. And it's just increasing and increasing because it's so easy to have everything on your phone. Especially right now in Hong Kong, for example, I just use my phone to pay payments. I don't use enough cash because you go to 7-Elevens, you go to buy your coffee or some restaurant, you can pay with Alipay. It's so easy. You just take your phone and you don't have to have your wallet. So sometimes I just forget my wallet at my place. So when I come back, I'm like, oh, shit, I don't have my wallet. How can I pay? But you can find a way to pay with Alipay, for example. So it's quite interesting.
Exactly. I can't tell you the number of times. You know, I travel a lot between Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. I'm always on the road, China. And the number of times I've arrived in the country and 2 days after being in that country, I have to go pay for a cab with cash for whatever reason. Yeah. And I realize, oh, I don't have any money. Like I haven't solved the currency in my wallet, and oh, I've got only Hong Kong dollars. It's always a bit awkward. I'm like, hey, can I find some other way of paying you because I don't have any money?
Yeah,
and I don't realize for 2 days because I never have to use cash. Right? I don't pull out my wallet.
Yeah, true. Well, I think we can actually move on. This is a great segue into like virtual banks, right? So. Yes. I'd like to want to touch upon that because it is perhaps COVID, this push into this space where basically physical banks are not needed at all anymore. And what's your view on that? What do you think the benefits of these new virtual banks coming online?
So I don't know if you tried a few solutions. There is one already online since a couple of weeks, but what is a big difference and major difference between traditional banks like DBS, HSBC, or others, and virtual banks? The new ones, it's the virtual banks doesn't have any physical branches in Hong Kong. So they have their operation teams, business development teams, and other teams working on the solution, but they cannot have any physical branches. So I think it's interesting because the onboarding process and some banks like DBS try also before to do it, and we have really solutions in November is how you can onboard new clients digitally in a couple of minutes. So we discussed in the beginning of this call what is innovation for some people is to fill a form of 25 questions and change it to 9 questions to reply on your phone. That's what we have done. So when you go on the physical branches, you do all the documents. If you want to have account opening, you want to do a deposit, you want to have a credit card, you need to fill many forms. But if you just want to do account opening without any deposit on the first minute, on the first hour, how you do it? What are the most important and crucial information for the bank and mandatory one? So you go through the list of the question, you decrease the list of question, and you make the experience seamless for everyone. Some banks still do multi-screen or multi-support onboarding solution. So you go on your computer, you go on a form, you fill it. After 20 minutes of filling the question, you have a reference number. You have to go to your phone, download the application of the bank, come back, input your name and the reference number, and continue to do the application. It takes 30 to 40 minutes. Who have 30 to 40 minutes to do it? You see what I mean? And after this, you don't have the account open online directly. So it's not live. You still need to wait 1 or 2 days or have another call with an RM. So for example, for DBS and also for some of the virtual banks, that process is possible in 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah. You reply to the question, you take a selfie, you blink your eyes, you sweep your face, you take a video of your credit card or your ID card, and you fill all the information required for account opening and deposit, for example. And after this, if you have access to a credit card, for example, at this moment, virtual banks don't have it yet, but for DBS, you can fill another form of few minutes to have access to a credit card digitally directly on your phone, and you can make payment with this one. So I think it's a good thing because it promotes the application of fintech and innovation in Hong Kong, definitely. It can also offer a better experience and attract new kind of customer for the banks that the traditional doesn't have, because you need still to go to a physical branches for some of them. And the other thing is to promote also, I think, financial inclusion on the retail side, especially. And I want to say the segment of SMEs and corporate, because they were facing a lot of difficulties over the last years. And this solution will support them and help them to have access to better services and online services, and hopefully on a way that it will have no friction at all for them to have access to a loan, to a deposit, or to payment solutions.
Yeah, well, out of the 8 licenses that were granted to the virtual banking license, do you feel that everyone that was selected is really producing a value prop to the community, to the retail customers, a real proposition, or do you feel like it's more of an opportunistic attraction, in the sense that, okay, you've got an insurance company, yes, they've got money, they got assets, they've got customers, but they're going into this new space. They've never tried to run a bank, but now they've got this license. What is your take? I mean, are they just being opportunistic to grab that license?
I don't think so. I think there is a need for Hong Kong, and as you can see, Singapore follow up with virtual banks application last year until the 31st of December, and now we're waiting for this summer to know the name of the virtual banks. Malaysia is following up on this one as well, and we have interest from other countries. So one of the things is I want to say is how you create new and product and servicing of service offering. So by doing joint venture, for example, between an insurance and another company, or you mentioned about banking and maybe other companies like a travel agency or travel applications, you can integrate fully on a virtual bank a new kind of services, help to experiment new services to pay your bills on electricity, internet, and also increase loyalty to the banking services. Can also provide, I think, a suite of retail financial services and product unique as telecom.
Yeah.
What you can say also is that it's really personalized and you can catch more data certainly and understand more the need of your customers with hyper personalization of the services that you can offer to them in one go with only one shop to them with different stakeholders there. And what you can say, yeah, maybe we can say also that it can help to open accounts and apply for financial services on the go in real time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it seems like with 8 licenses, that seems like a lot of players in this space just for Hong Kong. But I think one perspective would be let's see what each one will create and what will they bring to the market. But then at some point, I can imagine some of them will disappear, right? Because they either will work or not work, right?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of years before this. The thing is they are super well funded. They have to have 300 million of Hong Kong dollars, I think, as a capital.
Yeah.
Companies behind them are super big name in China or internationally.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure like from the perspective and the interview we can see of the different stakeholders of those virtual banks, they don't plan to be break even for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So maybe we have those 8 virtual banks and maybe more for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And maybe after this we will have like kind of a convergence of them or maybe a merge and acquisition of some of them. But with 300 million of Hong Kong dollars, they have kind of a reserve of stock of money to see through the coming years in the beginning. And also, as you mentioned, it will be about the offering of each bank. What makes the difference between, for example, Zhong An Bank and Mox and WeLab. And it's quite interesting to see what we have in a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what about, maybe we can just talk about what it really means. Like, so the comparison then between a traditional bank and these virtual banks, is it more digital than what DBS is trying to do? Is it simple to say that that's a differentiator? Like, what does that really mean? Is it really more digital or is it more about innovation?
It's just the ways that you can apply on the thing. So I think in a couple of months, everyone will be on the same page and everyone will like, you have some people that are like a front runner and those are a bit slow, but in a couple of months, everyone will be there. Virtual banks and banks have the same services for the retail. They have deposits, they have personal lending. They will have in a moment investment wealth management tools. They don't have it now, and they will have it certainly next year where the banks still have it right now and it's already live. All of them will have payment solutions. Some of them will have different cards, debit card, credit card, or top-up cards that you can just use for some moment. And the difference will be on the SME offer, I think. But all of them will have full range of full scope of services, the same services. But the difference will be on the user experience. So are they more digital or not? One moment, everyone will be digital. It depends if you need to have your relationship manager on the phone and you want to meet him face to face. This will be the difference. But some people still like to have a relationship manager, for example, to in front of them and the relationship manager need to be the best one, but need to be really careful with them, because in the end of the day, if you have a portfolio of assets, you don't want to have 5% or 4.5%, and the guy comes to you and say 5% is better. You just want that guy to be here for you, understand your needs, and be on your shoes before you have a need.
Yeah, Henry was part of his panel out in Laser when actually someone made a comment that they don't believe in this space, digitized currencies, because he believes that he can see all of his money physically by going to the bank.
It's like I like to go to a bank where I can touch and feel my money. I don't think you understand how banks work really, and modern fractional reserve banking, and there isn't a room somewhere at DBS where they keep all the money. So look, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. And the truth is, you know, even in 20 years time, it would not shock me at all if there's still some people who say, no, I want to go to a branch, I want to write a check, I want to do those things. Just like even today, e-commerce still makes up a minority of the world's transactions. But I also think that there is massive opportunity for people like the Amazons of the world to step in, because in 10 years time, even the people today who are so resistant to purely digital, I guarantee they'll be doing it all online. You know, one story I like to tell is 15 years ago, I remember my father would refuse to use his credit card online. He thought it was black magic. He wanted to write a check. He's like, where do I mail the check? Yeah, I don't mind buying things online, but I want to use checks. And today he's happily buying things off Amazon. So things will change. And again, if customers say, yeah, I can see the value, I can see that this is easier and better and cheaper and faster and more convenient, trust me, they will shift.
What is very interesting is when the solution is live. You try something, you have it directly. You don't have to wait for 3 days, 5 days, or wait for 1 month to have your personal loan, for example, or for your credit card.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's move over to then big data, right? So I think this is an interesting space because obviously with everything going on the phone, everything's digital on the computer, a lot of intel then gets captured about users. You know, I actually, one of my old team members is now working under your team as a data scientist. So I mean, let's just talk about that. What do you think are the key gaps that you will fill to help solve problems through innovation using big data? Like, how is your team managing that? Is it hard? First of all, has it been hard to find the talent?
It's still difficult to find the real talent, to be honest with you. It's, you know, on LinkedIn, hyper personalization of the status and their name of or your job's names. It's really interesting. If you're a consultant, you can be head of everything you want, for example. But I mean, for the talent, like, one of the good things is Hong Kong have very good university, and they fill the gap that we have here with really good talent on innovation and data. Data become more and more important, and I think people see it not only on the fintech side or bank side, but from every perspective. Every application are using your data. For example, if you fly with an airline company and you choose every time Windows, they will suggest directly for you or pick directly for you a seat on the Windows now. This is hyper personalization. This is very interesting. On the data for a bank, it's a bit different because a bank is like a big board with different vertical and teams. And the regulation doesn't allow everyone to share all the information from a consumer side or corporate side or private banking side, because you have this Chinese wall blocking the access of full data. So I think one of the key challenges later on is to have that kind of approach of one bank data, where a team can find and you need to have the agreement and the consent of the users. For example, if he has an account for his daily life, he has a private banking account and also corporate accounts, because some people don't want to gather all the data that they have. They prefer to split it. But if you want to gather all your data, how you can make the analysis of the portfolio, where is he today on his life, and what we can suggest has a hyper personalization for products in the future, on how we can help him to improve his income or decrease his different costs. This is one of the things. So you have, for big data and data, you have so many applications. You can have application on FX trading, for example. You can have an application on the finance side for a bank, on the compliance for the KYC and AML solution. You can also have on the consumer side hyper personalization. So understand the needs of the consumer before he need it. Or for example, if you go to IKEA and you buy a sofa, how you can sell an insurance directly to your customer even before he need it, and when he just pay with his card. So for a bank like DBS, we have a team of data analysts. I think there is 30 people on the team, and we try to have a data scientist or analyst in every team now. This is quite interesting. We have also a kind of data council that we that gather every month and give some direction. We have a lot of communication internally through a newsletter, email, workshop as well, online training on how we can use the data, what is important, because the data is not how much data you collect from your users, because we're not Facebook or another application, but we're banking services and banking on the banking industry. You don't need the data of Facebook or Google or your emails. But what is interesting is how the specific data about your finance can be interesting for us, how we can proceed it, how we can come back to you, and how we can deliver the best services. So, for example, sorry if I'm a bit long here. I worked on a project last year with a machine learning solution, and we try to predict the default of a loan application for corporate and SMEs. By using statistical software, we could predict models with 40% accuracy. This is quite low, but using machine learning, we can increase to 80% accuracy. So with these tools, we can increase the quality of our report to those companies coming to us and asking for a loan. We can increase the understanding of the situation of the company, and also enhance some tools. So we saw with a restaurant who opened 2 restaurants last year. They were super successful. They want to open a third one. We could see for those people that they are facing some internal issues on managing their cost. So they were going too fast for different reasons. And we work with them, and we come back with a report and say, you need to work on those things first before you think growing for a third restaurant. So maybe you can spend 1, 2, or 3 months to solve all those issues. Come back, show us that you work on it and you solve this one, and we can really consider your application. So they came back, they work on it. The ratio was totally different, and we could predict that the next loan will be totally good for them. And now they have 4 restaurants in Hong Kong, not 3, but 4. So it's quite interesting to see that, and what is the impact of a restaurant manager, a risk team, and how the data can drive more businesses for them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And it sounds like a good project to work on, and good learning experience as well.
Yes, it was really interesting, and the feedback from the different restaurant manager or clients we use that solution for them was quite fruitful for us. So yeah. We can see directly a real impact for them.
Yeah, maybe let's talk really quickly. We're probably gonna end this session, or actually the call. It's almost at 5, but I'm curious to know both your perspectives. Then, when it comes to big data, right? So you think most users today, if they're on their phone, they expect that someone's tracking something about them. It's almost like they're okay with it. But at what point do you make that information transparent broadly? Like, what people talk about, a public blockchain and private blockchain, right? Where do you draw the line? Where do you actually draw a line on how much information you can get from someone when everyone's pitching that this information allows us to serve you better, right? There's got to be, people think that there should be a line, but perhaps maybe it shouldn't matter. And what's your perspective? Like, I mean, data is data, people are people. I mean, is it really breaking in, crossing the line into the privacy too much?
Yeah, I clearly understand your question here. So, so what I can say here, it's we have different trainings for the bankers at DBS, so everyone has to do it, and some of them are really focused on data and big data, and we have also different frameworks that we need to understand. So through the training, we go through the different framework, and we try to see how we can more responsible, respectful, and the thing of a bank is, we are like heavily regulated from different regulators. So all the data of a client doesn't interest us, but what is the purpose of the data? What is the use of the data? And don't be too aggressive on the client, what is the word? Sorry, intrusive on the client. So we don't want to be unsurprising a bank or use of data, how we can respect the client. And the other line that we have is how we can explain this data and the use of the data to a client. If we cannot explain the use of the data to a client, we cannot proceed with the data that we collect and make the analysis. So it's an easy way to do an example here. and explain to you how we can limit the scope of the use of data. But we still need to have the consent of the client to use that data. So if we don't have the consent, we cannot use it. If you can use the data, how we can explain it? How is it respectful for him? How is it unsurprising? And how is what is the purpose of doing this kind of analysis, treatment of the data, and how we can come back with a result for them? Yeah. Does it reply to your question, or is it too vague for you?
No, it's fine.
No, to me, the whole question is, what is the relationship between that company and its stakeholders in the first place, right? Is it a us versus them conversation where I want to get your data so I can monetize it and make myself money, and you're just the people that I use to generate that data? Or do you take a slightly different view of the corporation's role in society? And you say, wait a minute, corporations are supposed to be about value networks to serve your stakeholders, right? They're the ones that we're supposed to be delivering value to. Yes, there may need to be a value exchange, and part of that deal may need to be, hey, give me your data. So maybe if you're a social network, that's part of the contract. I provide this platform for free, you give me your data so that I can run my company. But I think that companies haven't thought about what that means in terms of giving back value to the user. Right? If I'm the user and I'm generating my data and this is your gold mine, how come I don't get any of that huge cash flow stream, right? I'm the one who's generating the content. I'm the data who's valuable. You're selling literally my data, my preferences, my beliefs to advertisers. Why don't I get in on this? And I think it's high time that we sort of redefine the conversations that we're having around that interaction companies and its customers. And this year at Davos, the big theme was stakeholder capitalism, and talking about how it shouldn't just be shareholders versus stakeholders, right? Us, the company, versus the client. Not least of which because I think that's just bad business. And I see this happen at so many startups where they started out where you had that feeling of, wow, they're really on my side. Me as an early adopter, I liked using Uber in the early days because I'm like, yeah, we're really working together to disrupt the taxi industry, and I like that. And I remember in the early days of Uber, you pressed one button and you got someone on the phone, and you're like, hey, where's my car? Hey, it's coming soon, right? Now I can't even call anyone, right? You got to go to these menus and these chat apps, and it's just deeply frustrating. And more importantly, I don't have that feeling of we're in this together anymore. I feel like it's us versus them. When I try and do something and the company is trying to explain why I'm wrong and why they need to still charge me money or whatever. And like I said, I think that companies, especially in this digital world where everything is becoming flatter and flatter, companies better think long and hard about that interaction between them and the company. And am I really adding value? How does that value network work? And is there a way for me to bring in those stakeholders and redefine that relationship so that it's not transactional? It's based on something a little deeper, and customers actually feel that sense of affect to the brand. They're like, I just like the brand. I'll buy stuff from them because I like them and I want to support them.
Exactly. And one of the things that we don't need to forget as well is the data is not our data, it's the data of the clients. So especially for a bank. So it's never our data, it's always the data of the client.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. All right, Medhy, I think we'll just conclude this call. I have to thank you very much for making time. I know you're a busy man, as always.
Thank you very much for helping me and proposing me to do this podcast with you guys. I really appreciate it.
Perfect, man.
Awesome.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
All right, you too.